to take 2 of Ask the Organizer. So I am going to start out just with a little sort of organizing 101, because as I review the questions, I'll be talking about certain general principles that are going to apply in a lot of situations. Okay, but first we'll just do a little centering, because this is mindful decluttering and organizing. And I don't know what you had to do to get here today, but let's just start with some slow breaths. And I'm just going to invite you to imagine yourself standing at the doorway to your home, any door. And just pause for a moment and think with gratitude of all the ways your home has served you, no matter whether it's been a year or 30 years. And if you can, bring to mind one space in your home. It can be a whole room or it can just be a corner, but bring to mind one space in your home that brings you joy. Great. All right, you can allow your eyes to open now. I like to start with a centering exercise because, first of all, it helps me to be more calm as I speak with you. And I think that we often just don't take enough time to just breathe and also to be in a place of gratitude. Most of you probably are here because you have some challenges within your home, don't we all? But we also want to focus our attention on the things that are working. And by focusing our attention on the things that are working, we can take whatever's working and say, oh yeah, well, what if I did a similar thing? What if I did a similar thing in this other room? And you might have to think a little bit outside of the box to think what that means. A couple of the questions that were posed this time were already answered in the first video. I'm still going to answer them if we have time, but I've put them at the end just because that video is available and that audio is available. First, I want to start with just an overarching concept, which is that there is no right or wrong way to declutter or organize, particularly to organize. We watch Pinterest, we see all these Martha Stewart things, and we think, oh, my house is supposed to look like that. And it's not going to, because you live in your house. Your house is not a photo shoot. So there's going to be times when it looks very, very nice, perhaps when people are coming to visit. And then there's going to be times when there's just a little bit of chaos, because that's what life is like. And I like to think of it, a feng shui consultant who came to our home a long time ago talked about it this way, as an in breath and an out breath. So you can, as long as you can bring your space back to a place that you like, that you're happy with, it's okay that it gets messy in between. Life is messy and decluttering is messy. It often gets worse before it gets better. So just know that, and don't think there's anything wrong with you or the way you're doing it if that's the case. But if you can find things without frustration, and you and other people in your household are happy with the way that things look, you're doing it right. I want to suggest that you take care of yourself when you're decluttering and organizing. I want you to do that all the time, but just choose a small area to begin with. Make sure that you're well rested, that you've got some water, maybe you've had something to eat. You want your brain to be working optimally. And that doesn't mean that you can't declutter or organize when your brain is not working optimally. Actually, there are certain things like paper sorting I prefer to do when I'm sort of brain dead, because it's so boring anyway. But just take care of yourself and use a timer. Maybe just work for an hour and then see how you're feeling. And that's part of the mindful part. Just notice how you're feeling. Are you feeling fantastic and you feel like you could totally do another half an hour? Then set the timer for half an hour and go for it. If you're feeling tired, you might want to get up and do another activity just for a little bit and then come back to it. Just quickly, I'll go through the general principles. We're going to start with like. Just organize like a kindergartner. Put, all of one type of thing, all of your plasticware together, all of your bowls together, as much as possible. Some spaces are not going to allow for all of one category to be together. But start with like, just organize like you're in kindergarten. And then use what you have. You don't have to run out and buy something new, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. And then label. My favorite labeling tool are super sticky notes. You can use them for just about anything. You can use them for file folder labels if you want color-coded file folders without buying colored file folders. And they're easy to switch out. So I use them in my, in all my closets, in my pantry. Hopefully when I show you a pantry picture, you'll be able to see that. And if you change your mind about what goes in there or what you want to call it, you haven't wasted a lot of money or time using a super sticky note. The 80-20 rule tells us that we usually use 20% of what we own in any given category. So clothes, you probably use 20% of them, and you also get 80% of the value from that 20% of things. So that's just something to keep in mind and be looking for that 20%. What are the things that I use the most? What are the things that bring me the most joy? Do I put on a dress and then take it off and put on another dress repeatedly? And if so, then what am I keeping that other dress for? The dress that I could just keep taking off and throwing on the floor or hanging back up. And there's a couple of guiding questions that you can use to help you as you declutter. And last time I had 4. This time I actually have 5. One of my virtual clients told me about this. And this is apparently a Marie Kondo question. So I'll tell you which one it is as we go along. The first question is, do you love it? And the way Marie Kondo asked that is, does it spark joy? Do you use it? Do you have a better one? And then here's the new question. Is this something that you see as a part of your future? So, and then what's the worst thing that could happen if you let it go? So those are the 5 questions. They're also all over my blog. I have years worth of stuff, and I'm going to be sharing a couple of blog posts with you today, but I don't know what you're going to be looking for next week. So as long as you know how to search in the blog, you're going to have a wealth of information and resources available to you. One of the questions was, can you recommend strategies for using things that end up in the back of cupboards? So that's a really good question. I like to use containers that go back into the space, and I'll show you a picture of that. But just take, say, a shoebox. You take a shoebox, a clear shoebox, and it doesn't have to be clear, but you can see things better. You can label it if it's not, and then it can go all the way back. And in my pantry, for example, we have some extra canned goods right now because of COVID. So I have a shoebox that says extra chicken broth. I have one that says extra tomatoes. There's not room for it in my regular cabinet, in my primary storage, which we'll talk more about later. Measure the space, inventory what's currently in it, and then decide whether you want to keep all the things that are currently in it or whether some of them actually should go somewhere else. But then, and that's a good opportunity, if you take everything out and measure, that's also a good opportunity just to wipe things down, which is great for cleanliness and for feng shui, moving the energy around. Some people like to use Lazy Susans. That's not something that has really worked for me, but you can look online and see how some people use Lazy Susans to help them be able to access things that are in a cabinet. How do I decide what to chuck and what to keep? in a pantry full of spices, condiments, jars, plastic containers, linens, small appliances, etc. Once again, I would inventory what's in there, decide whether it all belongs there. Maybe some of those appliances are things that you don't use very often. And if you've got enough space, you can still keep them there, but you might keep them up high or in the back, where it's, or down low, wherever it's harder for you to access. And then know that spices do lose their potency over time. So you might want to crumble them up a little bit, smell them, see if they still seem fresh. So the next one says, my bathroom drawers are disorganized. They are filled with things that we generally use, but they are in a haphazard mess. This makes them annoying to get into. Any suggestions for better organization of items stored in bathroom drawers? So for drawers, I definitely recommend taking everything out, clean and measure, start to see a pattern here, and then sort like with like. And you may have a miscellaneous category, or if it's your junk drawer, it may all seem miscellaneous. But then look around for small jewelry or gift boxes or any kind of small containers that you might have. And you can open, I'm talking about open containers, and just slip them into the drawer and play around with it. You're going to have to move things around. I mean, you can measure them if you want, but I usually just move them around. I just eyeball it and move them around until they work. And once you have your sorted groups, then you can determine what size small container you would need. One of my virtual organizing clients used a box that once held light bulbs to organize her underwear drawer. And only if what you have isn't enough, then you can do some measuring and get what you need to complete the project. So I'm going to stop for a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. So this is today's event, Ask the Organizer. And here, just a reminder of the 5 guiding questions, which I won't read to you. So this is just an illustration of the idea of primary storage, which means keep things close to where you use them. And one thing I like about this kitchen picture is they're using the up space, they're using the tops of the cupboards, they're using the wall space, they're even using the floor for the wine. This is a cabinet from a preschool classroom that I helped to organize. And this is just an illustration. What we did here was we moved some shelves around. We used the sticky notes for labeling, cleared the counter so that the teacher had some workspace. Okay, so this is just an illustration of how you can really maximize the insides of cabinets. Most of what I'm going to be showing you are kitchen cabinets, but you can use this anywhere, in any cabinet. If you look up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that there's, a shelf riser. I even have one of those, in my bathroom, under my bathroom sink. And I've got hand towels on top and other kinds of things underneath. So you can use these really handy shelf risers anywhere. And then in terms of the canned goods, we just got like with like. And then in the bottom where the spices are, those are staggered shelves. There's 3 shelves there, white shelves. You can find all these kinds of things on Amazon, or when we're not in COVID, at the thrift store. This is just a closer up illustration of what the little shelf expander looks like. And this is from the kitchen at a co-working space I used to be in. And I'm pretty sure she put in a shelf. So that's the first thing to look at in your cupboards and cabinets. Do you have like shelves that are this high and stuff that's this high on top of it? That's a lot of wasted up space. If you don't need the space, you don't need to go renovating, but often, very often, and we did this at our old house, we put in a really skinny shelf, and that's where all the coffee cups went. And by doing that, we had an extra still very small shelf at the top where we could put spices, toothpicks, things like that. So just look at the shelf organization. And then if you can't move the shelves, and I'll show you a picture of that, then you can use the risers. This one, this is just showing this is our pantry empty on the left. So on the right-hand side, you should be able to see that there's a wire shelf unit inside the door. You see that with cans? That was here when we moved in. So I was just blessed with that, but it is awesome. It's so helpful. And but the challenge with this particular cupboard when we first moved in is that those shelves do not move. They do not move. And the one down at the bottom is huge. And it took me a while to sort that out. There you have it. We sorted it out. And I may have another picture of this, but hopefully you can see up at the very top. That's what I'm talking about with the clear containers. These happen to be store containers, but they don't have to be. I got a shoe box there. I've got, I think, 2 shoe boxes, one on the right and one on the left. And then the one in the middle, I believe, is a container store sweater box. And we've got flour and stuff like that. So there is nothing behind those shoe boxes. There's nothing to get lost back there. We pull down the flour thing, we get out the flour that we need, and then we put it back in there. So that keeps us from having things get lost in the back of the cupboard. So this is just a close-up of our pantry before we change things around a little bit. But the point I'm making is if the shelves aren't adjustable, then adjust what you store in them. And you might have noticed in the first picture of that pantry, I had some big bowls in there, but I hardly ever use those big bowls. So I decided to put them in further away. And this is actually all the cookbooks I own. And then that little container on the right has all of our user manuals and things in it. Does it make sense to keep those in the kitchen? Not necessarily. But, you know, one of my virtual clients said, you know, I've always kept these in the laundry closet. Is that wrong? Should I do something different? And I'm like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, if that's where you're used to having them, there are no rules. That's one of the main things I want you to get is there's no rules. So this is the cupboard more recently. And you can see that I'm also using the clear bin that's got grains like nuts and seeds and dried goods. And then, of course, you know, we had to stock up on wine when COVID happened, right? So this one, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's one of those cabinets that are hard to get into. If you look to the left, cabinet goes out that way. It's next to the stove. So these are really tricky. And, you know, again, this is not a Martha Stewart picture. However, it's functional. I have used a riser there to keep some things that we don't use that often. We don't really use plasticware very often unless we're picnicking. But the reason you can see this cabinet so well is because there's a little LED light that's on the inside, and they're awesome. We have them in closets and underneath the sink. The plumber came recently to work underneath the sink, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I can see." So they're very cool. But once again, I had no control over the shelf height, so I just had to deal with it. I just put tall things on the tall shelf and short things on the short shelf. This is a bathroom drawer before organizing. I don't have an after picture, but I can show you in some other drawer pictures, and I think I already spoke about it a little bit, how I would go about bringing some order to this drawer. Because what I notice about this drawer, well, I notice there's a lot of different categories of things. There's a lint roller along with some, you know, more traditional bathroom things. And perhaps that makes perfect sense if you use it in the bathroom. And it looks to me like you can actually pretty much find everything in here, but I think to the person whose drawer it was, it might not feel joyful. Might not feel attractive. This is a sock drawer, and on the left, there's a container, just a clear container. It's a little bit hard to see because it is so clear. And then on the right, there's a blue container. So we've got socks here. We've got, I believe that's sports bras on the left. And what I wanted to point out with this picture is you see how there's that space in between? You can use that space in between too, because the containers have created a structure for you. A lot of times, if containers don't fit perfectly so that you have a perfect puzzle, you can still use the space very effectively. This is another sock drawer, and just illustrating, use what you have. This person had over on the left this blue container and this purple container, and again, she's also using the inside space. I believe that in the middle there, actually, now that I look at it more closely, I believe in the middle is a shoebox with the lid cut off. So that's just sort of how to do things in drawers. And this is the virtual client who was so incredibly proud of herself because she used this used to have light bulbs in it. And so she repurposed it and put socks and underwear and whatnot in there. This is just an illustration of a closet, a before and after of a closet. We used, again, super sticky notes to label things and to make things easier to find. This closet is not less cluttered not less full of stuff than it was before. It is less cluttered than it was before, but it's full of different stuff. It's full of some things that were underneath the client's desk and she didn't like them there. So this was a project that involved rearranging in her home office. Okay, we'll come back to that. I'm going to stop the share right now. And so I want to give you guys a chance just to ask any questions. Does anybody, or share any thoughts if you have any tips or ideas?
This is Karen. I had one of the Karens. I had a question. Can you talk a little bit more about those in-cabinet lights? I'm presuming they're battery, but just wanted to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, they're AA and they're LED lights, so they last a really long time as long as you don't leave them on in the cabinet. As long as you turn them off and on, and I can put a link when I send the follow-up to the actual product.
Great, thank you.
Well, this is perfect because we're about halfway, and I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to stand up if you want to and stretch a little bit. Yeah, let's do a little neck roll there. Okay, good. I didn't do that last time, and I think we all need just a pause. So, the next question is, how do I best prioritize what to keep and how to organize my life when it feels divided between regular days, 95% of my life, and other fun, festive activities? This is where I want to speak more about primary and secondary storage. There is a possibility that if the closet that's in the everyday things and the outdoor occasional use things is getting too full, that putting the occasional use things somewhere else could be a possibility. It could also be a possibility to just put those things up high in the closet. Most closets have one up high space that's not all that easy to get to. So put things that you use less often there or back in a corner. So if the person who asked that question wants to unmute and say any more about it, they're welcome to.
Yeah, what I find is that even in my regular closet, I have all these beautiful dresses and they primarily are going to get used for when I go dancing, which sometimes I don't do for long stretches of time. And then, the racquetball stuff, which I haven't done for a very long time, is in the same space with ski stuff, which gets used more frequently. So it's just more about prioritizing.
Right.
And then it feels like it's no longer like with like if I start moving stuff out. So it, I feel kind of dopey asking it, but it's actually a real issue.
Yeah. Well, don't get hung up on like with like. Like with like is a tool. It's a sorting tool, and it can be a decluttering tool, because if you get all of your can openers together and you realize you have 5, then you can make choices about how many you need. But don't let anything hang you up. I mean, put the skis, if you use the skis more often, put them closer, and put the rackets that you use less often somewhere else. You know, you might even look around to see if there's other places in your home, maybe in a garage or a basement. But if you have room and it's just a matter of determining what goes up front, or what do you want to have easiest access, that may change during the seasons. You're not going to need the skis in summer. So you may want to do a little reorganizing seasonally, but I hope that helps. And then let's see, how to be successful and how to maintain it, how to maintain the order once you've created it. And it is an important question, because people come to me all the time and say, I straighten it up and then it just comes back, or I've even worked with another organizer and then it just comes back. And, you know, a little bit of that is life, like I said before, but you can create systems, and a system could be as easy as having a little bowl by your door where, you know, your keys and your card key for work, or your whatever you need for shopping goes. I mean, that's a system for being consistent about where you put things. I would trust your intuition and do things that work for you. Make time. This is the big answer. This is the real answer to that question, and it's not the answer that people want to hear. But you can't just fix it and expect it to stay that way. You've got to give time to maintaining it. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It can be 5 minutes each morning, 5 minutes each evening. It can be an hour on Saturday. Some people, you know, like to do, you know, once a month, a huge reorganization. I tend to just do it as I go. But the important thing is to be aware that things are starting to collect again. If you have a surface, it's often helpful to put something pretty on it. See, I've got my flowers back here. That keeps me from putting ugly things or an odd collection of things there. So that can be a good trick as well. Create new systems and get support if you need it. Someone asked how to create a plan, such as a timeline, to keep track of goals. And I have two tools. There's tons of tools, but the main idea is to get all your to-dos together, all your action items together, and 2 that are really good, which I've already put in the follow-up PDF that I'm going to send you. It are Asana and Trello. Those are both free online programs. They'll try to sell you a paid program later, but Trello is very visual. Asana is more about words. So you could have a look at those. They're both helpful because they give you alerts. Options for old CD collections. That's going to depend somewhat on your goals. If you're just trying to free up space, and it also depends on whether you want to keep the covers, you want to keep the physical CDs. If you don't, then obviously you can rip them and have them in digital form. If you do want to keep the artwork and the CDs, but you want to keep them in less space, like you don't want to keep them a ton of them in a row in cases, then one of my clients has a binder. There's pages you can buy that hold 4 CDs at a time. It's not a normal size binder. You have to buy a special binder and it'll come with the pages. But then you can also, within that, put just regular old sheet protectors and put the covers from the CDs in the sheet protectors. So that brings it down a whole lot. There's a thing that they sell at the Container Store that keeps about at least 50 CDs in a very small space. You would not be able to keep the covers. So the idea, if you want to create more space, is to just get rid of the cases somehow. And a couple of other questions I will answer. One person asked what to do with stuff now since donations are not accepted. And there's 2 organizations that allow shipping of donations, and that's Souls for Souls, and I'll put these in the resource, and Give Back Box. So those are 2 good things to know about right now, but really anytime. Unmute yourself if you asked a question and I didn't answer it.
I had one,
Okay.
which is about dealing with partner who isn't on board, right, with the cleaning up. And the part of the clutter problem is every single thing gets put down wherever it gets used.
Yes. And that is tricky.
And left there. That's not only put down, but left there.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I kept that till last is because we did talk quite a bit about that in the last one. But I'll share what I shared then and any other thoughts that come to mind. It's really hard. It just is. There's nothing easy about that. And, there's a lot of questions I would ask if we were working together individually about, the relationship and what kinds of things and whatnot. But what I can say right now is you want to lead by example. You want to be very careful with your language. And the best way to be careful with your language is to first be careful with your feelings. So if this is driving you crazy, you may have, you may not be able to get out of that place. You may have to say that. Sometimes we do in relationships. But if you can get to a place of compassion and recognizing, yes, I make messes too. We both make messes in this house. And I'm going to start with my messes. I'm going to start by working on my messes. And sometimes, not every time, sometimes the person will just sort of begin to start working on their messes too. If that doesn't happen, then you may need to talk about it and negotiate. And in my book, All in the Family, Decluttering Your Primary Relationships, I have some guidelines for that. You can find negotiation guidelines online anywhere. But I would just say that when you start the conversation, try to find something good to say about how this person is helping in the household. And I would first just notice that. I mean, maybe they do put things down willy-nilly, but do they help with the dishes? Do they help with the yard? Are they doing other helpful things that you then don't have to do? So start with that. Start with appreciation. And then just say the I statements. When all these things end up on the floor, and you don't even have to say when you put these things on the floor. You can say, when these things end up on the floor, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I don't know whether to clean it up myself, or I'm afraid to ask you, just talk about it, but with compassion, and think about the way you're going to approach it. Does that help at all, Karen? Good.
Yeah, hi, this is Adam. Actually, I'm calling for my wife, Eileen.
Okay.
And I had a question about kids. So
Yes.
this had some really good examples, and I think some of that you said about partners you could apply for children as well. But how do you get kids buy-in and kids to follow the system and to stay organized?
Well, what are their ages?
They are 6 and 10.
Okay. You want to model this behavior. You want them
Of
to
course.
see you organizing. But with kids, it's great if you can let them be involved in choosing the containers and let them be involved in deciding what's important to have close by, you know, have conversations with them and let them feel like they have, well, not just let them have them feel like they have authority. Give them authority. Let them decide. You're going to have certain things, you know, you can share with them. What I would like, what Mom and I would like, is for there to not be things on the floor. How do you think we can accomplish that? You know, what are your ideas about how we can accomplish that? And you can have different colored containers for different kids. Does that help at all?
It does, yeah. And I think it's really around, we're able to keep pretty good handle on their rooms and gotten into a schedule with that, where in the morning, that's part of their morning chores, is to kind of straighten up. And especially the oldest is interested in keeping his personal space organized. But like things like the playroom, for instance, it just is so quickly becomes like kind of unusable space because just stuff stacks up. And I have worked to empower them, and that seems to work for their rooms. You know, that's kind of their stuff that they care the most about and care about appearance for. But then when I get into, all right, well, we'll decide what to kind of throw away, what to donate, what to keep, they will kind of be like, well, we'll just donate and throw it all away. Like, you know, and then they want to just walk away. Like, oh, Daddy is going to just, you know, pack all this up, and that's fine because we're outgrown. And then I feel like, well, no, you helped create this mess. And so I want you to participate in organizing and putting it away. And so I think that's the challenge.
They don't want to engage in the process.
Yeah, I could go in and clean it all up and have four, of course, and put things away. But yeah, they just would like, oh, well, you know, they just want to walk away.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. But, you know, I would say, you know, just make an agreement up front. We're going to work on this together for 15 minutes. Can you agree to that?
Sure.
That would be a starting point.
Right.
Anybody
Hello,
else?
Pam. My name is Gail. This is the first time I've attended one of your videos. I found it very helpful.
Right.
I'm in the process of moving, and I'm to a much smaller place. I've made a first sweep of my current apartment and gotten rid of things that I could readily identify, but it still looks like a mess to me of too much stuff, and I'm kind of discouraged at this moment.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions?
You know, I have a couple of the blog post links that I'm going to send to you are about keeping the momentum going. I guess break it down into manageable tasks. I don't know if you've done that at all. Like, just say, I'm going to start with books. I'm going to address books today. And then next week, I'm going to address kitchenware. And
That's kind of what I've done so far, and I've done with those manageable tasks.
Yeah.
Now I have bigger tasks like closets.
Yeah. Well, I am going to send out, as a part of this, you're going to get my guide for closets. So I'm not going to read it to you because I'm going to send it to you.
Well, the momentum idea, I think, is definitely true. Even on days I don't feel like working at this, I do. You
do?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, you might want to give yourself a reward for that then.
Thank you.
And celebrate that. And you might want to make a list of all the things you've already done rather than focusing on the things that you haven't done.
That's good.
That might be helpful to keep things and put things in perspective.
Okay.
I want to do the drawing now. First, let me tell you what the prizes are. There's going to be 2 copies of my ebooks, and the books are Mindful Decluttering, and that's just a step-by-step guide for how to declutter, some of the principles I've already shared with you, and a lot of them are in the blog post, but sort of a little comprehensive pamphlet. They're really small pamphlets, really. And then the other is All in the Family, Clutter in Your Primary Relationships. And if I draw your name, you can choose which book you would like to have. Then the next one is going to be free access to my online course, Declutter Your Life with Chakra Power. That's on Teachable. It's a self-paced course. And then the grand prize is going to be a free hour of virtual organizing. Okay, so this is for a book. And that's Gail's going to get a book. And Gail, I'll be in touch with you offline to decide which one you want.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Evelyn, you're also going to get a book, and I will once again email you about that, and you can tell me which one you want. And when I do that, I'll send you descriptions of them. And this is going to be for Declutter Your Life with Shopper Power, the online course. That's going to be Karen M. Sorry.
Great. Thank you so much.
Another one. In fact, I would give it to both Karens because I don't want to get your hopes up. And all right, and then here, for the 1 hour virtual organizing session, Karen G.
You know what? If
What?
if you're gonna give me the online course anyway, go ahead and give that 1 hour virtual to someone else.
Well, which would you rather have?
The online,
Okay, all
I
right.
actually
Awesome.
would.
Okay.
Thanks.
So then I will draw another name. Thank you. That's very kind of you. So Aileen, I don't remember your name, husband there.
Hi, no, this is Adam.
Hi, Adam. I should remember that. That's my son's name. Okay, so you guys are going to get the 1 hour free virtual organizing so we can talk more about that kid issue there.
Yeah, thank you so much. That would be great.
So I just want to close up by saying that next month on June 27th, which is also a Saturday, basically same time, same place, Michael, who's letting us see her now, Michael's waving to you. Michael and I are going to be doing this together, and I'm really excited about it. We've known each other for quite some time, and I've been interviewed on her podcast. She has a podcast, an awesome podcast called Let's Purify. And purifying has a lot of similarities to decluttering and some nuances. But we just love talking to each other and working together. And I can send links. Let me remember to send a link to our first interview. And then our second interview is going to go live on June 3rd. I'll send out Michael's information as well in case you want to subscribe to the podcast or look for that one in particular. I'll certainly put it out on my social media as well once that podcast episode is live. But we're going to do a session together, and it's going to be somewhere along the lines of the inner art of decluttering, would you say? Yes?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it more on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll send you more information about that. But we're very excited about it. It'll be on Zoom, and everything it'll be very similar to this.
Yeah,
except for
really
you'll have
for,
two people to share their
right. And it'll be really good for the emotional blocks, the overwhelm, the confusion that can come with decluttering and trying to figure out what to keep and trying to figure out how to manage your energy during the process, the energy of your space. So maybe a little less nuts and bolts than today, which today was really super helpful for me because I don't specialize in the organizing end of things. And, a little bit more of that inner work. So I hope you'll join us if that sounds like it could be helpful.
Yeah. And Gail, maybe that would be something that would help you to move forward.
Yeah, I put that on my calendar. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so very much for joining me. It was really fun, and I'm glad that we were able to have a little bit more a lot more interaction than last time. Last time I just talked nonstop the whole time until the very end because I had so many questions. And if you're interested in listening to that first Ask the Organizer recording, there's an audio and a video. You can find that on YouTube, and I'll put a link to it when I send the follow-up. So have a lovely day.
Thank you, Pam. Bye, all.
Thank you so much, Pam.